Imagine hearing a warning call somewhere in the wild. Every animal around you suddenly stops eating. Then they run. You run too, because when everyone else senses danger, standing still is rarely a good idea. But there is no predator. The bird that gave the warning simply waits for everyone to leave, then flies down and takes the abandoned food. Humans did not invent this strategy. We only gave it words. Long before the first human sentence, life had already discovered a strange advantage. You did not always need to be stronger than another creature. You did not always need to be faster. Sometimes, you only needed it to believe something that was not true. A harmless insect could look poisonous. A flower could resemble a potential mate. A bird could announce a danger that had never arrived. None of this required language. None of it required a word for truth. And yet, in some form, deception was already there. So perhaps the first lie was never spoken. Perhaps it was worn, performed, or silently hidden beneath the ground. Before we search for the first lie, we need to decide what a lie actually is. Imagine someone tells you it is raining outside. They know the sky is clear, but they want you to believe there is a storm. That is a lie. The information is false. The speaker knows it is false, and the speaker intends to change what you believe. With humans, that definition seems simple. With animals, the boundary becomes much less clear. An animal can send a false message without understanding that the message is false. It can deceive, without being a liar. Consider a harmless butterfly whose colors resemble those of a toxic species. A predator sees the pattern and stays away. The predator has been misled. But did the butterfly decide to deceive it? Probably not. It did not wake up, examine its wings, and plan a disguise. Its appearance developed slowly across generations. Butterflies that looked more dangerous were less likely to be eaten. They survived, reproduced, and passed those features on. Eventually, the false warning became part of the body itself. This is deception in its effect, but perhaps not a lie in the human sense. There may be no intention, no plan, no understanding of what the predator believes. Long before complex minds learned to manipulate information, bodies were already doing it. Some creatures look like leaves, others resemble branches. Some display the warning colors of animals far more dangerous than themselves. A predator approaches, reads the signal, and makes a decision. Dangerous, not worth attacking, not food. The decision may be wrong, but if the deception works, the animal survives. In this world, appearance is not merely decoration. It is information. And sometimes, the information is false. Plants can exploit the same weakness. Some orchids produce shapes and scents that resemble female insects. A male approaches the flower, believing it has found a mate. It lands, attempts to interact with the flower, and carries pollen away to the next orchid. The flower has no brain. It does not understand attraction, disappointment, or deception. But evolution has shaped a signal that takes advantage of the insect's expectations. This may be one of the oldest kinds of deception. Not a lie inside a mind, but a false message between two living things. One creature sees a pattern. It makes an assumption. Another creature benefits from the mistake. Early deception did not require intelligence. It only required a world in which signals carried meaning. But eventually, deception became more flexible. It was no longer fixed in the shape of a wing or the scent of a flower. It became something an animal could adjust when the situation changed. Now the deceiver had to notice who was nearby, who was watching. The false message had learned to move. And once deception could change with the audience, it began to look much closer to what humans call lying. In the waters around Australia, male cuttlefish compete for access to females. Larger males often dominate these encounters. They can intimidate smaller rivals and block them from approaching. But some smaller males use a different strategy. A male cuttlefish can show a courtship pattern on the side facing a female, while displaying a female-like pattern on the side facing a rival. The female sees a potential partner. The rival sees no immediate threat. The display changes according to who is watching, and the deception can fail if the wrong observer sees the wrong side. The animal is not simply carrying a misleading signal. It is directing that signal toward a particular audience. In parts of Africa, fork-tailed drongos spend time near animals searching for food. Drongos can be useful guards. When a real predator appears, their alarm calls warn the animals nearby. Everyone hears the warning and runs. But sometimes there is no predator. The drongo gives the call anyway. The other animals abandon their food, and the bird flies down to take it. Some drongos can even imitate the alarm calls of other species. When one false call becomes less effective, they may switch to another. The behavior changes with the response of the listener. A false danger is created, and fear becomes profitable. This looks very close to lying, but we should not claim more than we know. We cannot enter the mind of a drongo. We do not know whether the bird thinks, "There is no predator, but I want them to believe there is one." That sentence may exist only in our human interpretation. But the result is real. The bird produces a false emergency. The listeners react to an imagined danger. The bird receives a reward. Whether or not it understands the idea of truth, it has learned how to alter the behavior of another mind. And that ability is much older than human language. There is a weakness in every false alarm. It only works while alarm calls are usually honest. Imagine that every warning in the forest is false. At first, the animals may continue to run, but over time, they will stop reacting. A warning that can never be trusted has no value. The same is true of warning colors. A harmless species can benefit from looking dangerous only while those colors still represent a real threat often enough to matter. Deception depends on a reliable system. It exploits a pattern that already means something. And this creates a strange paradox. The first lie could not exist in a world without truth. A false warning requires a history of real warnings. A disguise requires an appearance that usually carries genuine meaning. A dishonest signal survives by hiding among honest ones. In that sense, deception behaves almost like a parasite. A parasite cannot survive without a host, and a lie cannot work without trust. This does not mean nature is moral. Animals do not preserve honesty because honesty is good. Reliable communication simply helps living things survive. Real warnings save lives. Honest signals help individuals cooperate. But cooperation also creates an opportunity. When most members follow the rules, one individual may benefit by breaking them. Few animals represent this problem better than members of the crow family. Crows, ravens, and jays often store food beneath leaves, inside cracks, or under the ground. But other birds may be watching. Later, those witnesses may return and steal the cache. The bird must remember where it placed the food while controlling who else gains that information. Experiments with scrub jays have shown that a bird may return and move food after another bird watched it being hidden. This behavior is especially common in jays that have stolen food themselves. A bird with experience as a thief behaves differently when it becomes the potential victim. Some jays choose darker hiding places when another bird can see them. In other situations, they prefer surfaces that make less noise. They may also perform movements that resemble hiding food without leaving anything behind. The observer sees the performance, but may not know which location is real. No sentence has been spoken, yet information is being controlled. One animal notices that another is watching and changes its behavior because of what the observer might learn. This does not prove that a jay thinks exactly like a human. The behavior may come from learned rules and past experience. But even that is remarkable. Long before we controlled stories, other minds were already learning to control witnesses. Once deception becomes useful, detecting deception becomes useful too. The deceiver must become more convincing. The observer must become more cautious. Then, the deceiver changes the strategy again. What begins as a trick becomes a contest. An animal that notices who is watching may protect its food more effectively. One that remembers previous cheaters may avoid being exploited again. Over many generations, the pressure to predict and manipulate other minds may have favored more flexible intelligence. Deception was not the only force shaping intelligence. cooperation, tools, and environmental challenges also mattered. But the liar and the lie detector may have helped shape each other. Human children offer another view of this process. A young child may secretly look at a toy after being told not to. When an adult returns, the child says, "I didn't look." Then, a moment later, the child accidentally reveals the toy's color. The child understands enough to deny the action, but not enough to manage everything the listener might know. As children grow, their lies become more consistent. They remember what they have already said, control their expressions, and consider which information another person possesses. A convincing lie requires more than false words. It requires memory, self-control, planning, and some model of another mind. The impulse to hide, distract, or mislead may be ancient, but language allowed it to escape the present moment. Without words, an animal can hide food, imitate danger, or direct attention away from something valuable. With words, a person can invent an alibi, fabricate a witness, rewrite a past event, or make a promise they never intend to keep. Language gives deception distance. It gives it memory. And it gives it imagination. A false story can travel beyond the person who created it. It can reach strangers, survive for years, and influence people who will never meet the liar. A single false signal can become an entire false reality. But language does not belong only to deception. It also allows us to compare stories, preserve records, ask questions, and expose contradictions. The same tool that makes large lies possible also makes large systems of trust possible. Human society depends on information from people we cannot personally observe. We trust doctors, engineers, pilots, and millions of strangers to perform small tasks correctly. Without that trust, complex civilization could not function. This is why human deception can be so dangerous. A liar may no longer be exploiting one individual. They may be exploiting an entire network of trust. So, are humans born to lie? Not exactly. Evolution rarely gives us one fixed command. It gives us capacities. We have the capacity to cooperate, compete, care for others, and manipulate what others believe. Deception can protect someone from danger. It can help a weaker creature escape a stronger one. It can preserve privacy or prevent unnecessary conflict. It can also steal resources, destroy relationships, and manipulate entire populations. Calling a behavior natural does not make it morally right. Evolution may explain why deception exists. It does not decide how we should use that ability. Perhaps honesty is what happens when a mind capable of deception decides that trust is worth protecting. So, did lying exist before language? Deception almost certainly did. It existed in bodies that promised danger where there was none, in signals adjusted for different observers, in false alarms, and in food moved after the witness had gone. But the first real lie may be impossible to identify. A lie leaves no fossil. Intentions do not survive inside ancient bones. Perhaps it began with a misleading appearance, then a flexible signal, then an awareness of attention, and eventually a mind capable of thinking, "I know the truth. You do not. And I can use that difference." But even then, the lie depended on something older: trust. A false alarm only works because alarms are usually real. A disguise only works because appearances usually mean something. The first lie was probably not spoken, but it could only exist because, somewhere before it, something had told the truth.